I'd been rolling eggshell white over her living room wall for nearly an hour when she walked back in barefoot, a mug balanced in one hand like it weighed nothing. The late afternoon sun pressed through the sheer curtains, turning the air gold. She didn't speak at first. She just leaned against the doorway, watching, one ankle crossed over the other, the kind of stillness that makes you aware of your own breathing. She was older than me, not in the way people say older, with a shrug, but in the way her movements carried history. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled back loosely, a stray strand grazing her cheek. There was a faint smell of sandalwood on her skin, something warm and private. I tried not to stare. Tried. "You work fast," she said finally. Her voice was low, not husky exactly, more like she'd been thinking before she spoke. I set the roller down in the tray. "Helps when no one's talking to me," I said, and then immediately regretted the joke. She smiled without teeth, a quick softening at the corner of her mouth. "Then I'll keep quiet." She stepped closer, passing behind me, close enough that her sleeve brushed my arm. The bristles of the roller still dripped, but my hand tightened around the handle instead of moving. She crouched near the baseboard to inspect a line of paint. "You missed a spot," she murmured. Her fingertip hovered just shy of the wall. The hem of her shirt slipped forward, revealing the inside of her wrist, pale and fine-veined. I knelt down too, more to be on her level than to fix anything. "Show me," I said, though I could see it already. Her head turned slightly, and for a heartbeat our faces were close enough that I saw the faintest freckle under her left eye. She didn't point to the wall. Instead, she traced a tiny curve in the air, like an invisible brushstroke. "Here," she whispered. I filled the silence with movement, rolling paint where she'd indicated. She stayed kneeling, one hand on the floor, fingers spread. There was something deliberate in how she didn't move away. The smell of paint mixed with her perfume until I couldn't separate the two. "You like doing this?" she asked, voice quiet enough that it almost blended with the hiss of the roller. "I like finishing things," I said. "Seeing the difference." She gave a small laugh, not mocking, but curious. "And what about starting things?" I didn't answer right away. My wrist brushed hers as I reached for more paint. She didn't flinch. Her nails were short, clean, a faint half-moon of polish. When I stood, she rose too, slower, brushing her palms on her jeans. "This color," she said, looking at the wall, "it feels lighter than I imagined." I looked at her instead of the wall. "It suits you," I said before I could stop myself. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing just a fraction. "Me?" I shrugged, heat in my face. "Your place," I corrected, though we both heard the slip. For a moment she just held my gaze. Then she stepped even closer, close enough that her shoulder nearly touched my chest. "You're good with a brush," she said, softer now. "Ever think about painting something besides walls?" My hand tightened on the roller. The room had gone impossibly still except for the tick of a distant clock. Her eyes stayed on mine, not playful exactly, searching. Then, from the hallway, a sharp knock at the front door broke the silence. She blinked, turned her head slightly, but didn't step back. "Expecting someone?" I asked. Her lips parted, but she didn't answer. The knock faded after a second round, then silence. She didn't move for a long beat, just stared toward the hallway like she'd forgotten what a door was. Finally, she exhaled through her nose, low and steady. "Wrong address," she murmured, but didn't sound convinced. She brushed past me, and as she did, her palm grazed my shoulder, almost a push, almost a touch. While she disappeared into the hallway, I set the roller back in the tray. My pulse felt louder than the clock. I shouldn't be noticing the warmth of her hand. Shouldn't be memorizing it. When she returned, she leaned against the doorway again, arms folded now, like she was wrapping herself back up. "Persistent," she said. "Jehovah's Witness, maybe." I smiled, but it felt crooked. "You okay?" Her eyes flicked up. "Yes." "Why?" "You went pale." She gave a quick shrug. "I've had enough visitors for one lifetime." She pushed a stray strand of hair behind her ear, fingers trembling just enough to betray her. I almost asked more, but she filled the space first. "Were you in school?" she asked. "You look student Y." I nodded. "Dropped out last year." "Needed work." She took a small step into the room. Painting, whatever pays. My father had a shop, but I stopped. The paintbrush in my hand felt suddenly too heavy. But she prompted softer. Closed it after the divorce, I said. I stayed with him for a while. He drinks now. Her expression shifted, not pity exactly, but something like recognition. My husband drinks too, she said quietly. Ex-husband. I turned. She was closer than before, her hip brushing the edge of the stepladder. You're divorced. For a while now. She lifted her chin, then let it fall again. It's quieter than I expected. Quieter but heavier. We stood there, two people circling a conversation we weren't sure we were allowed to have. She glanced at my hands, flecks of paint on my knuckles. You're very careful, she said. Even when you're rushing. I swallowed. Careful. She reached out before I could move, her thumb rubbing a smear of white from my wrist. The touch lingered a fraction too long. Like that, she murmured. I didn't know where to put my eyes. She pulled her hand back slowly, fingers curling against her palm as if she'd surprised herself. Sorry, she said. It's fine, I said quickly. I mean, her laugh was quiet and cracked a little in the middle. We're ridiculous. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say no. Instead, I bent to pick up the roller again. I should finish the wall, I muttered. She stayed close, her breath brushing the side of my neck when she spoke. Finish it later. The room tilted. She reached past me to steady a paint tray, her fingers closing briefly over mine on the handle. Neither of us moved away this time. She let go of my hand on the tray but didn't step back. For a moment we just stared at the streak of paint on the floor between us, like it was a line we weren't supposed to cross. Her phone buzzed from somewhere in the kitchen, a long, insistent vibration. She closed her eyes, exhaled through her nose, then turned away. She started, but didn't finish. I nodded, though she couldn't see. My heart was hammering. She picked up the phone and glanced at the screen. It's my sister, she said, thumb hovering. She thinks I should be out more. Her laugh sounded brittle. I don't tell her about anything. About me. I asked before I could stop myself. She turned, eyes sharp for a second, then softened. About anyone, she said quietly. About being lonely in this house. She set the phone face down on the counter without answering it. I shifted my weight, wiped my palms on my jeans. Maybe she's right. Maybe, she echoed, but her gaze stayed on me. A floorboard creaked somewhere above us, the old house settling, or maybe something else. We both looked up, holding our breath. Nothing. Then she gave a tiny shake of her head, as if to dismiss it. I reached for the roller but knocked the edge of the tray. A splash of paint dotted my forearm. She caught my wrist instinctively, steadying me, and her fingers stayed there a heartbeat too long. Warmth shot through me, sharp and dizzying. You're shaking, she whispered. Am I? Her eyes flicked to my mouth. I felt myself leaning in before I realized I was moving. She didn't move away, not exactly. She just angled her face so that my breath skimmed her cheek instead of her lips. I can't, she said under her breath. Why? She let out a soft sound, not quite a laugh. Because you're young. Because she didn't finish. Her thumb brushed my pulse once, then released me. The air between us felt charged, like static before a storm. She backed up half a step, but stopped when her hip hit the stepladder. I closed the distance without thinking, bracing one hand on the wall beside her. Her phone buzzed again, louder this time, rattling against the counter. Neither of us moved to answer it. You should get that, I murmured, my face inches from hers. I don't want to, she said. Her hand lifted as if to touch my chest, then hovered, trembling, between us. We stood like that, her back against the wall, me leaning in, our shadows overlapping on the half-painted surface. The smell of paint and sandalwood felt intoxicating. She swallowed hard, eyes flicking from my eyes to my mouth and back again. Tell me to stop, I said quietly. She didn't. Instead, her fingers finally touched the fabric of my shirt, a light, helpless press. Her fingers still rested against my shirt. I could feel every tremor through the thin cotton. Neither of us spoke. The clock in the next room ticked like it was counting down. I've been trying not to, she began, then stopped. Her throat worked as she swallowed. God, you make this difficult. My voice came out lower than I meant. Trying not to what? She shut her eyes. Notice you. Want you. The last word was barely audible, a thread of air between us. I stared at her, breath caught. Why would that be wrong? Her eyes opened again, sharp with something between panic and longing. Because I'm old enough to know better. Because I've been the scandal before. Because someone will talk. Who? I whispered. My hand lifted without thought, brushing a stray hair from her face. It slid back behind her ear, and my knuckles grazed the soft skin of her jaw. She shivered. Everyone, she said, and the word cracked. My sister, my ex, your father if he ever, she broke off, biting her lip hard. I stepped closer until the paint roller handle pressed into my hip. Her back was still to the wall, but she didn't retreat. You think I care what they say? You should. Her voice trembled. You're 23. You still have a life to build. She laughed without humor. I've already built mine and watched it fall apart. I pressed my forehead lightly to hers, just enough to feel her breath on my lips. Stop pushing me away, I murmured. If you don't want me, say it. Otherwise, I didn't finish. Her hands moved from hovering to resting on my chest, palms flat. Not pushing, not pulling. Just there. She stared at me like she was memorizing my face. You don't understand how lonely I've been, she said, voice breaking. And how dangerous it feels to not be lonely now. I think I do, I said. My thumb stroked the edge of her jaw. I think I feel it too. She exhaled shakily, leaning a fraction closer. Our noses brushed. She smelled like paint and sandalwood and something sweet underneath, maybe tea. Her breath hitched when my fingers slid down to the back of her neck. You're going to ruin me, she whispered. Or save you, I said. A long silence. Then she tilted her head just enough that our lips hovered a breath apart. If we do this, she murmured, there's no pretending afterward. I'm not pretending now, I said. Her eyes fluttered shut. My hand cupped her face fully, thumb resting at the corner of her mouth. She swayed forward, barely, and I felt her exhale against my lips. And then a sharp rap on the window pane, knuckles on glass. Both of us froze. A shadow passed across the curtain. She drew in a sharp breath, eyes wide, lips still inches from mine. Don't move, she whispered. We stayed frozen for a beat, listening. The shadow outside the curtain shifted once, then stilled. Her hand slipped from my chest, and she stepped sideways, away from the wall and me, like someone waking from a dream. Stay here, she whispered. She smoothed her hair with both palms, but her fingers trembled. I watched her cross the room to the window. She cracked the curtain just enough to look out, then went very still. God, she breathed. What? She turned, the color gone from her face. That was my sister. She's in the driveway. My stomach dropped. She saw us. I don't know, she said, voice shaking. I didn't tell her you were here today. I didn't tell anyone. She pressed her knuckles to her mouth, then let them fall. She's protective. She'll think what we almost did. She flinched at the word almost. She's already suspicious. She always was. We stared at each other, the unpainted wall behind me like a blank witness. She took a step closer, stopped herself, then reached for the roller but missed it completely. Her hand stayed in the air a second, fingers curling, before she dropped it to her side. I thought I could control this, she said softly. I thought I could keep you at a distance and no one would notice. Her eyes flicked up, bright and unsteady. I lied to myself. I crossed the room in 2 strides. Lied how? Her breath hitched. That I didn't want you. The words came out like a confession pulled from her throat. That I could just hire you, watch you work, and feel nothing. Something shifted in my chest at her honesty, relief and dread mixed. And now? I asked quietly. Her hands lifted, then fell again, palms grazing my arms on the way down, a touch too light to be accidental. Now I'm terrified, she whispered. Of her. Of this. Of how much I'm thinking about you. I felt myself leaning in again, but she put one hand flat against my chest, not pushing, just a barrier of skin and heat. If she comes inside, she said, everything changes. Maybe it already has, I said. My hand closed over hers where it lay on my chest. She didn't pull away. Outside, a car door slammed. We both flinched. Her eyes started toward the hallway. I could tell her you're just painting, she said. I could tell her you're nothing. Is that what I am? I asked, my voice low. Her answer was a whisper I barely caught. Not anymore. The house seemed to hold its breath. She stepped closer until our foreheads touched, her hand still against my chest, mine over hers. Then tell me, I murmured, what do we do now? Her lips parted, eyes shut tight. We stopped pretending, she said. We stood in the middle of the half-painted room as if the walls had grown higher, sealing us in. Outside, the crunch of footsteps on gravel, then the front door creaked once and went silent. Her sister was either gone or standing just beyond, listening. She didn't move. Neither did I. The brush tray sat between us like a forgotten prop. Say something, I whispered. Her throat worked before she spoke. I told myself this would stop here, she said. A harmless crush. A pretty distraction. You'd finish the job and leave. Do you want me to? Her hands lifted, fingers curled against her palms as though holding something fragile. No, she said, and her voice cracked. That's the problem. I stepped closer, slow, until we were inches apart. She smelled of sandalwood and paint and something warm underneath, a scent that felt like a confession. My hand rose to her cheek. She didn't flinch, her breath hitched instead. If we do this, I murmured, we can't go back. I know. Her eyes glistened. But if we don't, she trailed off, shaking her head. I don't think I can keep pretending. We stood like that, her back to the wall, my forehead nearly touching hers, the air between us thick and warm. Outside, a car engine started and faded away. Her sister was gone. We were alone again, but the danger she'd brought with her still clung to the room. Her hand rose, fingers trembling, and brushed paint from my jaw. The touch left a streak, but she didn't care. You're too young for this, she whispered. I'm old enough to know what I want, I said. She closed her eyes. Then tell me. I did, not with words, but by sliding my palm to the back of her neck, thumb tracing the soft hairline, our noses brushing. Her breath mingled with mine, unsteady. I'm scared, she said. Me too. Her hands found my shoulders. We hovered there, suspended, both of us trembling with what we'd already decided, but hadn't yet done. Then, finally, she leaned into me. Not a stolen kiss yet, but a slow, deliberate press of her forehead to mine, a quiet surrender. Her fingers tightened in my shirt. I felt my own breath shudder out. When she pulled back a fraction, her eyes were clear. No more hiding, she whispered. If we're in this, we're in it. I nodded, my hand still cradling her face. Then we're in it. For the first time, the room felt lighter. We hadn't crossed every line, not yet, but the pretending had ended. In the half-painted light, with our foreheads still touching, we both knew exactly what we were choosing. The house felt different after the decision, like a storm had rolled through and left the air scrubbed clean. The paint smell lingered, but now it mixed with the scent of tea she'd set on the counter, cooling untouched. She sat down on the floor against the unpainted wall, knees pulled up, palms flat on the drop cloth. I haven't sat on this floor in years, she said quietly, as if it were a confession. I lowered myself beside her, careful not to crowd her. Our shoulders almost touched. Feels like a good place to start, I said. She looked at me out of the corner of her eye, a slow, tired smile forming. You're still a kid sometimes. Not when I'm looking at you, I said, and the words hung between us like something fragile. She exhaled, leaning back until her head touched the wall. I spent so long convincing myself I didn't need anyone. That if I just stayed busy, kept things neat, painted over what hurt, her voice trailed off. And then you walked in with your roller and your quiet eyes. I turned toward her fully. You don't have to explain, I said. I already know what this is. Her gaze met mine, steady now. And you're not scared? I am, I admitted. But I'd rather be scared with you than safe without you. Something softened in her face. She reached for my hand slowly, like she was afraid it might disappear. When our fingers finally laced together, it felt like a seal pressed on warm wax. We sat like that for a long moment. The light from the window shifted, sliding across the floor until it painted both of us in gold. She rested her head against my shoulder. "This isn't what I planned," she whispered. "Me neither," I said. My thumb traced slow circles against her palm. She tilted her face up and kissed my forehead, not hurried, not stolen, but a lingering press that felt like permission. "No more pretending," she murmured again, echoing herself. "No more," I agreed. We stayed there as the sun dipped lower, our hands still joined, the unfinished wall rising behind us like a promise instead of a secret. For the first time since I walked into her house, the silence felt easy. She leaned into me fully now, her weight warm and real. I wrapped an arm around her, my fingers brushing the soft fabric of her shirt at her waist. Her breath steadied against my neck. "Whatever happens next," she said, "we'll figure it out." "We will," I said. And for a while, we just stayed like that, two people on a drop cloth in a half-painted room, not hiding anymore.